This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, have you got yourself a PR Podcast plug yet? It's our new feature at the top of the show right here where we promote your passion project. That's your blog, your website. It's not your business. It's the thing that you do on the side that gets your juices flowing, right? It's the thing that you love, that you wake up in the middle of the night and you go, I got to do that thing. Or it's the thing you wake up on Saturday morning and say, I can't wait to do that thing. It could even be your podcast. You know, last week we had Amy Rosenberg of Veracity Marketing on, and she's got her own podcast about PR as well. And that's what we're talking about, right? Tell us what your passion project is. We'll plug it right here at the top of the show. Don't be shy. Drop us a line at the PR Podcast on Twitter and let us plug your thing. Now on to our guests. Let's get right into it. Scott Baradell is CEO and founder of Idea Grove, based in Dallas, Texas. It helps its clients secure trust at scale through its unique Grow with Trust approach. Scott is an established authority on trust and the editor of the online publication Trust Signals, as well as the author of an upcoming book, Trust Signals, Brand Building in a Post-Truth World. I have an idea of what we're going to be talking about. Scott, welcome to the PR Podcast.
What was your first clue? Hi, thank you, Jody. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. What is a trust expert?
Well, a trust expert, I've used that term to describe myself because I've been studying this for some time, brand trust specifically, but it ties to all kinds of trust. And the bigger thing that I want to do in trying to give back to the PR profession is to tell all PR pros that that is the mantle that you should take to be a trust expert. That's what you should be, a trust keeper for your clients, for your company. That should be your role, because I think a lot of PR professionals have allowed themselves to be defined by others, to be kind of painted into a corner. Oh, you just go get media coverage for us, or you have this limited tactical role. And the whole point of Trust Signals, the book and the project, is to for PR people to start thinking more broadly. Okay, what's our history? What do we do best? But also, how does that tie to the world today? And where can we have the biggest impact as a profession? And I think it's as the keepers of trust for brands.
I think that's a great concept, and we're going to spend the majority of our conversation here talking about it, because to me, trust is everything, right? If the media can't trust you, they're never going to cover your clients, or they're never going to, accept the pitch or write the story you're asking them to write. If your clients can't trust you, your business cannot thrive. And we live in a world where, and I think in very recent history, we've had real challenges with trust, with people in positions of authority, and let's leave it at that, have not told the truth from all walks of life, and we're seeing that even now in the war in Ukraine. You've got propaganda coming out of the Kremlin that is apparently intentionally misinforming and disinforming the Russian people as to what's going on in Ukraine. So this concept of trust, I am a huge fan of it. Where does trust, in your estimation, where does trust begin with the PR person?
Well, if we look at the history of PR, I did a video on this the other day, and I've written quite a bit about it. A lot of people who've studied communications know there was Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays, and these were founding fathers of PR. They're kind of like almost like a Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and that they kind of came up at the same time, had similar backgrounds. They established personal computing, but had very different visions at the same time. This is the same thing for Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays. And they started out at a time in the early 20th century where there was no trust in big corporations at that time. The big corporations had just started emerging. There was no regulation of any kind, child labor. There were no 40-hour work weeks, all of these things. And the robber barons, as it were, the big railroad barons and big oil and all that, they had clear disdain for the general public. And they showed it. They did things like, in the case of the railroads, if they had a fatal accident, not only would they not put out a press release or not, communicate the details about it, they would deny it happened. They would say, fatal accident? What fatal accident? We didn't have a fatal accident. That was the level of disdain that led to the reaction of the progressive movement, Teddy Roosevelt, trust busting, all of that. And suddenly, because of this reaction, the big companies said, wow, maybe we need to start caring what people think a little bit. And that's really what caused Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays and these guys to kind of enter the breach. And Ivy Lee, he had the kind of what was considered the founding document of PR, his Declaration of Principles, which he issued when he started representing a railroad company. And I think it was Pennsylvania Railroad. And he sent out this Declaration of Principles that said, among other things, we are not an advertising agency. We aim to provide news. The news you need, we will provide in detail, without spin. They didn't use that word at the time, and so forth. Really set this out in a very straightforward document. One of the first things he did was there's a big fatal train crash, and he took reporters to the scene. Totally different approach. It really represents the best of what PR is meant to be. And that was all about establishing trust between railroads, between big companies and the public in a way that they had not done through this intermediary of the news media. And so the reason I talk about trust as opposed to kind of the media and media relations, which PR has always done, or so closely, we've kind of been seeing, I think, by a lot of people, PR as a junior partner to the media in some ways, is that we can't just rely on this intermediary of the media anymore to establish that public trust. It's always been about establishing trust with the public. But I think a lot of times people in PR have lost sight of that. Oh, I just need to know these key media people to schmooze with, and then they'll take care of, I get a good relationship with them, they trust me, and they'll take care of getting the message out there. Well, obviously that doesn't work anymore. The mainstream media does not have that level of influence anymore. Half of the media, was distrusted by half of the public, and the other half is distrusted by the other half. You've got to do something more nuanced today. I call it a continuum of influence, from the person who leaves that one Google review of your business to this whole range from nano to macro influencers, and then the tier one media, trade media. You've really got to cobble together as a PR professional, what is this kind of continuum of trust building sources that are going to be meaningful for my client and their customers. And so that's why I emphasize trust, this larger objective of trust, as opposed to ways that we've traditionally gotten there, i.e. through the validation of media coverage. I'm just trying to step back and say, hey guys, don't let people define you as being a media relations person, because they're just making you a tool in the marketer's toolkit. And we always, as a profession, Jody, we always had the aspiration to be the equal of marketing, not a tool of marketing, the equal of marketing. And once we say, you know what, trust, as you said, trust is the most important thing. You're not going to sell anything if you don't establish trust first. And even if you can sell, guess what? You've got other constituencies you have to worry about that marketers traditionally don't worry about, especially today. You can get canceled as a brand by people that never bought or intend to buy your product, but they can still ruin your business. And so this is why PR, thought of more broadly as being the keepers of trust for brands, to help companies grow, build, protect their brands by maintaining trust with their audiences. That's why it's just so important. And I think a good way for PR people to realize you've got a really important role in business and in society today. And I think sometimes PR people don't realize that they have the opportunity to do big things.
Yeah, huge amount of terrific information there, and couldn't agree more that we as PR people are more than media relations people. That's just one facet of what we do. But we were talking even before we started taping the podcast about how news and information comes at us from all different sources now. Back in the days where you and I were reporters, it was the fax machine and the police blotter and maybe the daily newspaper. That's where you got your jump start on information, and then you went out and you sort of researched or called up people you knew, what's going on today, that kind of thing. Now you can sit back and just let it flow over your phone, through social media, through video, through people's own websites, through other news websites. There's a treasure trove of information, some of it good, and as you said, some of it not so good. And so I love the concept of being someone who can be trusted and building trust with all the audiences that you serve. Serving, and I've caught flack for this too, telling clients, I have just as much interest in taking care of the media's needs as I do as taking care of your needs. Because if I'm thinking like the reporter and helping the reporter write their story, they're more inclined to write the story that we're trying to get them to write, or that we're trying to convey to them. They're still going to do their own research. I have no way of influencing the final product, but with that trust, we stand a better chance. How do brands and PR people who maybe don't have the jump start that you and I have, how do you start building that trust? Is there a place that you begin? Is it your corporate voice? Is it your social media? Is it your website? Where do you begin building trust?
Well, for us, what I tried to do as a model for our agency, as well as one that I hope that other PR agencies will consider looking at, adapting, is I have a model for how we structure our agency called Grow with Trust. Trust is an acronym, and the 5 letters in the acronym stand for third-party validation, reputation management, user experience, search presence, and thought leadership. And my view is, as a PR agency, we're well positioned to cover all those bases working with our clients. And if you do that, you've put together a very comprehensive foundation of trust out there online. Where a company can start, I think you referenced it. I think the best place to start is by knowing who you are and what you stand for. Before you do any kind of communication to the media or to the outside world in general, think about what you're about and understand that people prefer brands to be three-dimensional in the same way that they prefer people to be three-dimensional. In other words, if you and I met at a party and all I wanted to talk about was this thing I wanted to sell you, you would find a way to the exit fast. You'd excuse yourself from that conversation, and you would want to know what I was about in a more comprehensive way, what things were important to me, how my brain worked, things that would form a natural kind of rapport apart from any kind of transaction that might take place. And again, of course, that's true between if you're interested in dating someone, for example, you're just going to go out there and there's a great old movie called The Tao of Steve, where he said, the way to, have you heard of it? He said the way to a woman's heart is not to just go all in and just say, hey, you're really good looking, let's go out. He said, be desireless, be excellent, and be gone. Those were his 3 rules. And the idea was, when you're in the woman's presence, remove all desire so you can truly get to know them, and then they'll appreciate that much more. And this is true in business too. This is what brands should do too. Start with that, something that where you're not selling, and then be excellent. So don't worry about, again, by excellent, he meant whether you can juggle, if you can talk about art history, whatever you have that's of interesting to share. Again, not selling something, just being something, showing that you're excellent, you're good at what you do, so people want to learn more from you. And then be gone, meaning, hey, you've put it out there, don't then turn it into high pressure mode. Do the opposite, and they'll come find you. As Dex says in the Tao of Steve, we pursue that which retreats from us. And that's a great story in that movie about dating, but it's a great story for marketing and PR people as well as the best way to do it. And so my advice to brands is to take that approach. And in order to do that, you need to be three-dimensional, meaning when we talk about being excellent, you have to have something to say. We mostly work in the B2B space, and I think I read Edelman came out with a great survey that said, like, it was don't have the numbers exactly right. It was basically like 85% of marketing decision makers read thought leadership content every week. 15% said it was good. All right, so they're just dying for good content. That's excellent content. They're dying for you to be excellent for them. They will take it from there if you can do that. So as a three-dimensional brand, the three dimensions I should say are, yes, one is your product. That would be like your body. All right, of course you need to sell your product to sustain yourself. But two is your mind. That's your thought leadership. Have something excellent to share with your brain, with your mind, that's not about the product, and that'll draw people to you. That's what the Dallas Steve is, be excellent. And then the third part, which I hadn't referenced, is your heart, and that's social purpose, which is so important today. So in other words, what people want from brands today, Jody, is not a story about how I sell this and I turn a profit. They want how what you're doing as a brand is contributing to the world becoming a better place.
Yeah, we have.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say, and just so it's clear, this is mostly about having your heart needs to be in the right place, but you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't mean become a nonprofit, okay? What we're talking about is Lego is a great example. Lego is generally considered, they're a $7 billion company. They make $1 billion in profit every year. They're generally considered the most reputable brand in the world. There's a company called RepTrack that does these studies, and they always come at number one or number two worldwide in terms of their having a great reputation. They are a brand with a social purpose that is seen as having a heart. How do they do that? They tie everything they do to this mission of making the world a better place by nurturing our children. So when they do things that we might have thought of, you and I, in the days of PR in past as known as corporate social responsibility or CSR, they do sustainability initiatives. All right, they do DEI initiatives. They do things like helping to catch predators online again, but they tie all these things to protecting, nurturing children in the same way that their product is meant to help develop the minds of the future builders of the world. Sustainability, you obviously have to have a planet in place for those children. You've enriched the experience of these children by providing them a more diverse environment and having everybody included. And of course, you want them to learn and grow online, and to do that, they have to be protected from the bad things out there. So they take these things that could all be one-off individual CSR initiatives, and they make it part of this core identity, which has become so strong for them. People, when they think of Lego, they don't just think of little plastic bricks. They can think of something much bigger. And that's because Lego is an example of a three-dimensional brand. So I would say, again, long answer to your question, which is my specialty, but the first thing a brand should do if it wants to establish trust is say, do I have something more to say and contribute to this world besides selling this widget in front of me? And let's figure out what that is. How does this, there must have been, when that founder started that company, something more than that they were trying to achieve. So let's tie this to having things to say, a thought leadership platform. Let's tie this to having a social purpose strategy that ties this to the larger goal of making the world a better place. Once you have that, you're in position to be a trusted brand. And you can take that platform and go out into the world with it.
So now, how do you start communicating that to the audiences that you want to connect with? Is it putting it on your website, putting it on your social? But before you even write a press release, before you even, push something out externally and it's saying, reporter, pay attention to me. Are you building that with your own vehicles first? How are you doing it? Are you talking to stakeholders? How are you doing it?
Well, I think a great way to start is with your own owned media. You know, in the trust acronym, we define user experience as basically everything that you control, and so that's your website, that's everything that you're sending to people. And if you're doing A/B testing, if you're trying these things, you'll be able to get a sense from people coming to your website and interacting with you, what things are resonating the most, and kind of what things to emphasize more with any kind of outreach, or especially paid outreach. But I think, yeah, I mean, your website is your home on the web. It is what I tell people is, you want the experience of when someone comes to your website to feel like they're stepping into their own living room. You want them to feel that comfortable. And if you're greeting them with messages about what you're all about, what you stand for, giving them useful information, good ideas, they're coming there and they're not feeling like they're being sold to and that they have to be skeptical and wary of what's going to happen to them on your website, because they're feeling like you're providing something of value. So if you start with that, then these if you're three-dimensional, you can extend that right out to social media very easily. In social media, the challenge has been traditionally, I think a lot of people thought of social media. I know when we frankly did it 10 years ago, and a lot of brands still kind of do it today, where they almost think of their social media channels like a TV channel, meaning like a traditional broadcast TV channel, where they'd be like, okay, we're going to post 3 curated articles by a trade publication in our space and some other source and some other source. And then we'll have that commercial message, come to our product page and see our product. And then we'll do, and it's a model that's been around forever, right? It's like the traditional advertising model. Here's good content, and as a reward, in return for providing this good content, you get to see our ad, or going back to our website. In other words, another way to look at that is you're showing other people saying smart things and you talking about yourself. So the best way, if you're three-dimensional, you can take the reverse approach of you saying smart things and then let other people say something about you. So I would say, from a social media standpoint, if you've invested in social purpose and having a social purpose strategy, if you've invested in thought leadership, then you're going to go out there and have really cool content to share. Here's a study we just did. This cause is really important. Here's an event that you should find out about. So you're talking about really useful information to share, never talking about your product, because you have more to say than you have a product to sell. And then the commercial message is, oh, and here's a testimonial from one of our customers. If you have an interest in our product, it might help you like it helped them. Just reverse that. And you can only reverse it and do that if you're three-dimensional. Because if you're not, what do you have to say besides try our product? Or, how many companies, you probably work with these guys too, and we have too. And so if you're working with folks who've been doing this a long time, it can be a difficult fight. But the white paper doesn't always need to say, and in conclusion, after sharing all this information and data with you, this inexorably leads to why you should buy our product. You just lost all credibility that you were trying to establish. And just explaining to customers, our clients, and brands that there's a longer window here. 95% of your potential buyers are not in market at that moment. So they might want education material, but if you go in for the cheap sale like that, you just wasted all your effort. So being three-dimensional, a big part of it is just having things to talk about and share and contribute, besides only being able to talk about what you're trying to sell.
It's such a great point to end on. And looking up another line from the Tao of Steve, which I can't believe that someone else actually saw that movie.
2 of us.
But right, you and me. But there's another line that I just Googled here as we're talking. The Tao of Steve isn't about picking up lots of women. It's about being the best person you can be.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, is just doing your thing, demonstrating to the world your values, your thought process, your thought leadership. But sort of here's why we get up in the morning and do what we do. We're not trying to sell you something. We're not trying to get you to do something. We're just, here's who we are. And I think that's a terrific approach for clients to take. So I'm so glad we had this conversation today.
Me too. I really appreciate being invited. It's always fun to talk about this stuff with I love that you were both former journalists who transitioned to the dark side and maybe make it not so dark.
It's not dark. And we have cookies anyway, so who cares?
That's important too.
Let's transition now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio and ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit just a simple answer, whatever comes right to your mind. So with your indulgence, Scott, here we go. Rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
My favorite news source is Twitter.
Twitter. All right. Now, it seems a lot of people say that out of the gate, but then they get to question number 2, which is, what is your favorite social media platform?
Social media platform is LinkedIn.
All right. All right. A rapid fire question number 3, coffee or alcohol?
Used to be alcohol. I'm trying to make it coffee.
Very good. All right.
Now that we're out of COVID.
Right. I have enough for both of us. Coffee, that is. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on the run food? Now, former reporter. Come on, Scott.
Favorite on the run food?
Yeah.
To be honest, at my house, I'm usually grabbing a banana or something on the way out. I know that's boring.
I bowl of fruit on the dining room table all the time. And just, I'm doing that more and more and I actually feel better. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Well, to be honest, I probably got 5-6 more years before I'm thinking about selling, retiring and things like that. So probably just being a dad. I've got 5 kids at home that are all still in school. I started a little late on that front.
All right. You're busy. Well, you're busy, right? We both have little ones. So you got your hands full for sure. Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Well, 2 places. Our agency is Idea Grove. It's been around for 16 years. It's Idea Grove, like in orangegrove.com. And the Trust Signals book came from a website that's been around a couple of years now called trustsignals.com. So you can find me at either of those places.
Fantastic. Scott, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all of your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.